Thank you so much, Tony, and good morning, Synod. Well, it's a great pleasure to present my annual report on the work of the DB, and I hope it gives you a flavour of the work of the team throughout 2020. Let me share with you just a few pictures from schools throughout the year to add to the words in my report. And if we may move to the first slide, we'll start in the month of January. And we began the year with a joyful Christingle service, and I'm very grateful to the Cathedral for hosting this special celebration. We rejoice in bringing schools together. And in February, as the next slide will show, we saw the launch of our updated teaching resource for RE, the Emmanuel Project. And I just need to sort of remind you that this resource has been widely used throughout Suffolk schools and increasingly across the country. And it really is a major strength of our work. It provides teachers with invaluable resources, not just on Christianity, but now on other world faiths for primary schools, and is very well received. When we moved to March, of course, this was the month in which there was considerable turmoil in the life of the nation. Lockdown was announced and schools closed, as I never imagined they would be, from the 23rd of March. But schools were very keen to support others and were quick to respond to a request from St. Paul's to record a song for those who were feeling particularly anxious and lonely, and reflecting Bishop Martin's words about strengthening communities and serving our local communities. It's extraordinary to me how schools have responded to that and very much been at the heart of their communities throughout this year. If we look at the next slide, we'll see how schools' creativity was evident both in gifts to local communities, like their local nursing home in this case, and indeed in displays within schools, and that's brightened others' lives and brightened the lives of our schools. And if we look at the next slide, we'll see too how that artwork was a real delight really in some of our schools, in this case in Great Wellneatham. If we look at the next slide, we see how pupils who were in schools were able to enjoy celebrating VE Day, and that was a great joy. I should explain, as my report makes clear, that between the 23rd of March and September, schools were initially only open to key worker children and vulnerable children. From June, it was possible for 3-year groups to go into primaries. If we look at the next slide, we'll see how schools are so much communities and they're built on strong relationships. And there were just some lovely examples of staff sending warm video messages to their pupils to keep in touch as we were running this sort of dual system really of the bulk of students learning from home and some pupils still in school. And as the next slide shows, this was reciprocated in a number of cases with pupils in turn saying thank you to their amazing staff. As we'll see in the next slide, throughout the year, we've been helping schools to develop the Christian vision of their school, and it's been a joy to see pupils and staff articulate this. As you'll see here, a number of schools working really hard, thinking about the biblical underpinning of their Christian vision and using Bible verses to explain that. And in the next slide, we'll see how when all pupils returned to school in September, of course, it wasn't possible for schools to continue in the usual way of holding whole school assemblies in the school hall. And so Gemma Kingston developed some beautiful planning resources for staff to help them to structure collective worship. And she chose very aptly, it seems to me, the themes of hope, courage, and endurance. And indeed, these half-termly resources have continued throughout this whole academic year, and these have been very much appreciated. And indeed, one of the spin-offs, which has been a real joy of collective worship being delivered online, has been the number of parents who were able to engage and enjoy seeing what their children were learning about. So that's been a great joy too. As we look to the next slide, we see how schools used a variety of ways to help children to reflect on the pandemic in all sorts of ways, as well, of course, as helping them to catch up on what they've missed academically. And it seems to me church schools are particularly well placed to take that holistic view and to help children to heal in the way that Bishop Martin was describing earlier. In the next slide, we're reminded that we're, of course, in this diocese all about growth, and it was good to see the expansion of one of our church schools in November. And as the next slide will show, schools were able to celebrate Remembrance Day in a number of ways, as shown here. And so in the final slide, I just wanted to, in December, of course, we were able to find a new way of creating a Christmas card, as we always do, and we're grateful to schools which brought together a number of images which we were able then to send out across the diocese and beyond. And so, as we'll see in the next slide, throughout the year, we have focused very much on well-being. And that's been a feature of our team. I'm grateful to Phil Knowles, who's always held this dear as one of our priorities. And just as schools have focused so hard on the mental health and well-being of their pupils, for us as a team, a real focus continues to be well-being of head teachers and governors and administrators too. But in my final slide, I wanted really to summarise the key themes of our work throughout the year. And they are these. We've always provided advice and support to schools, and last year we simply adapted to new ways of doing so. I think one of the simplest and most effective things we did was to bring heads together, to provide a safe space for them to share experiences on Zoom, to reassure them that they weren't alone. And I have to say, we became expert in the DFE's daily COVID guidance for schools, and we moved our training online and just tried to continue to find new ways of supporting and engaging with schools. I believe collaboration, though, is one of the lasting legacies of the pandemic in the world of education. We've seen increased collaboration. We've worked closely with other leaders in education throughout Suffolk, and we've shared resources with other dioceses to a much greater extent than before, and we're committed to continuing to doing so. I have to say the collaboration within the Diocesan MAT, the Multi-Academy Trust, models what we seek to achieve. We're stronger and more effective by working together. And at the heart of what we do as a DB is promoting excellence in RE and collective worship, deepening faith. And this remains a major strength in the diocese and our own contribution to growing faith. And lastly, we rejoice in the many ways in which schools and churches work together. And I'm so grateful to clergy who've willingly shared some case studies with Phil Knowles, which are on our website and in the report. And indeed, I'm grateful to all in Synod and beyond who are involved in any way in partnership with their local school. So as I give thanks to God for the year that's passed, I'd like to thank my team for their creativity and care. But above all, though, I hope you'll join me in paying warm tribute to schools for their hard work, their resilience, and their compassion for pupils and their families in this extraordinarily challenging year in education. I do hope you're encouraged by all that we are doing and would welcome any questions, and we'll hand back now to Tony. Thank you.